Hi there, welcome to my sketchbook tour. I titled my sketchbook Getting Back into Drawing based off what our professor Katie kind of noted to us on what her goals were for us with this sketchbook tour. So that's what I titled it, and let's get started. So for my first page, this was one of the prompts that Katie first gave to us, and it was, what does time mean to me? So something that I had kind of looked at was this like vortex of time and how it's not really this concrete concept that we might have. So it has a lot of interpretation. So that's kind of why she wanted us to draw it. I wrote, some new beginnings. My choir teacher in high school would say time is money, so I included that. And making memories and being in the moment. So yeah, I used all colored pencils, which was interesting, and I think I was still a little hesitant on like different types of things and different writing utensils that I could use for this. So that was an interesting thing that I noted when I first looked back on it. So as you can see here, I was really only using colored pencils and only kind of drawing about time. Here was where the first kind of other material that Katie gave us to inspire us more was this kind of piece of paper that she saw that was a bit tie-dyed, and it reminded me of the earth colors. So I kind of created this sketch to revolve around that and say, we're all connected in the world. And yeah, it was our shared cloth, and it kind of showed how our whole class is connected. So here were some more prompts that she kind of given us. Again, I'm really only using colored pencil, crayon, and markers. So I was a bit hesitant on what to do. And then Katie also instructed us so we could use, our notes and put those into our sketchbook. So I started to kind of use more of that kind of thing with these sketchbook tours too, and these sketchbook pages. So this was kind of one of our first big activities that we did. This was, again, me reflecting on things that I had done over the weekend. So I'd gone to this beach party, which was fun. This was actually the first enrichment that we had done, and it was a day without time tellers. And I'm originally from Chicago, so I had called my mom in Chicago, and it was interesting to see how it was dark out for her when I called her, but it was light out for us. So kind of seeing like the time zones and how I was able to educate what time it was based off of that phone call. Again, I'm just drawing more about design and time. This was a really fun activity that we did, which was we all gave different animals and people to draw in the class, and then we would pass our sketchbooks around to one person at a time, and they would draw what they think this would be for them. So it was really cool to see different people's interpretations of that. Again, I'm just thinking about alternative timelines and thinking of time and stuff. This was based off the lecture that we saw from the Afrofuturism speech. And I'm starting to use a lot more color, if you can see, trying to fill in some of the pages because they seemed a little blank at the beginning. So doing that a bit. Here's a better shot of that's sideways. Yep, doing more design studio stuff. Here was some different boxes that Katie had prompted us to draw in about Western imperialism versus Australian abnormality. So that was cool kind of to have a different format to fill in our sketchbooks. Again, this is more of our reading spreads, so I'm starting to kind of fill in the background more, still using the same types of tools, getting inspired by different things that students had kind of brought up to the class. Again, kind of doing the same thing here. Doing more design studios. So this was the first time I actually had used a different writing utensil, and these were with the bingo markers, and I really started to fall in love with how they kind of looked on the page. And this is where my pages start to get a little more crisp and edgy rather than the really clean ones at the beginning. So yeah, I started to kind of get more creative with that. Again, I'm using a little bit different of markers, and I'm starting to let my creativity flow a little bit and filling up the pages a lot more too. This was also a really interesting spread that we did that Katie really liked, and this was us, my group, taking the printed out version of the reading and putting it actually into our sketchbook and kind of drawing on it for the symbols that we appreciated from it. So that was interesting. More design studio. I kind of went back to markers. I was a little afraid to keep going the other route, but here I'm starting to actually fill in more of the pages, more written reflections. This was the listening while not looking, which was a really fun exercise that we did, and it kind of let me loosen up a little bit about coloring and not staying in the lines. Getting a little more creative here, you know. Now, I really start to use a lot more of the bingo markers and such, and trying to just use more materials to make it a little bit more interesting in my sketchbook. So as you can see, I'm really starting to kind of get in it. And then I do this whole different page that I hadn't really done before. And I had filled up an entire sketchbook page with the bingo markers, and instead of using them to dot, I like colored in the pages, which was really cool. And I made it as simple as possible by just drawing stars, which was really freeing for me because I felt like I had to cover up the pages in a lot of stuff, but it was cool just to cover it up in one shade of color and make it a bit more simple. Here's some more of that. Still using kind of the same markers and stuff, but here we had actually reflected with Katie on how we thought that our sketchbook practice was going. And you know, at the beginning, I feel like how I had started was a lot of just very simple art with the same type of utensils, but then as I started to kind of get more free and get more encouragement from Katie, I was actually able to use different materials and make it look a little more interesting. So again, I'm kind of being a little more free with my drawing, looking more at class discussions. This was kind of interesting because I was taking notes and a lot of the colors kind of bled through, but it also gave kind of like a cool imprint, and I was trying not to be as perfect as I had wanted to at the beginning, and just working with the different colors that had kind of bled through. Here was another cool thing that I had included. So I really was inspired by the star sketch that I drew. So all these stars that were stickers that Katie had provided kind of reminded me of Christmas. So I just included that. And then also Katie had provided these like little kid drawing pages. And I included that and stuck it in there and gave this guy a little crown, which gave some more texture. Doing some more notes. This was really cool. So the picture book that we included, my classmate Kamna had actually included an envelope to store her picture book because I wanted to keep it with my sketchbook. And that was a really cool element to keep it all in the same area with my sketchbook. Again, I'm starting to use a lot more colors and shades, which was really fun. Taking notes a bit of a different way than just writing everything down, doing symbols. I did this whole sketch about finding my voice. I feel like as I've like gone through college and kind of grown up a bit, I'm like finding like who I am and what my voice is and how I want to sound to other people and represent myself. And that was something I had reflected on during that class. Here was some more stuff that I just got inspired by, again with the same kind of like sketchbook and coloring pages that Katie had provided. And then at one point we listened to carnival music, and I really liked how that sketch looked on the big screen. This was a really cool thing. Oop, this will kind of went over a little bit. So this was when we got to use clay, and I actually had stuck the clay into my sketchbook, which was a really neat thing to do because, again, I wanted to keep all my materials in one place. In order for them not to get stuck together, I had the idea from Katie to put some sort of like piece of paper to block them. And something that I really liked from this sketch was that we had been prompted to sketch what we thought anticipation was, and something that just reminded me of it was eating a popsicle and anticipating that, you know, it's all gonna melt at some point, so you have to eat it as fast as you can. So that was kind of a simple thing that I interpreted with that. These are getting a little stickier. This part was actually from our big, our whole class, like park, interactive park that we had created. And my portion was this like campsite, and I had to take the popsicles out, but they kind of they were in the shape of like a tent, which was really cool. And this was the lake part that was made out of clay. So I kept that in there for the memories. Our fantasy environment. Just get a lot more creative with things, sketching during class, getting more creative, letting loose a little bit. This was our aimless activity wandering, and I had actually ended up going to the lake, which was super nice, and I had sketched out what I had seen, which was this really cool like bird bridge that went into the water, and it was just really peaceful to be able to like pay attention to this one bird kind of going in there. So that was really cool. I also started to take notes on like class discussions that we had, so I would be able to remember. This was the day of my birthday, which was really fun, so I just wanted to sketch that for memories, drawing a little bit more. This was my second enrichment that I did, which was the play that I was in called Passage, and I had done a spread on it and connecting it to time, so I'd written about this a little bit in my enrichment, but this was a quote from one of my directors, and this was a message that she sent to us when we got our first show canceled because one of our cast members was sick, and she kind of wrote this thing kind of about time, about, you know, like cherishing moments and appreciating, you know, what we have, and seeing this as a sign of something that's just like meant to be. And then we also had learned about Thich Nhat Hanh in our class, and he was actually in the script of Passage, and he at the very end was quoted as saying oppressor and oppressed are one, which really showcases a lot of what Passage is about, which is very like colonizer relationship, and showing that, you know, people can be one. Random guy that I just drew. Drawing more random stuff. Taking notes on the UX design speakers, which was really cool. I actually was able to take a lot of notes on it, based on the Q&A, and things that we had talked about, which was really cool, and being able to like add background images. So unfortunately, one of the last classes, I had left my sketchbook at home, and I was really bummed, and I was really trying to get all the pages in because that was my goal for the quarter. And so I just started to draw on some paper that Katie had provided us with all of our materials, and I actually started to glue them in, which was really cool. So I had talked about, you know, having graduation on Sunday. Something that kind of sucks with graduation is, you know, having your parents be divorced, so having to interpret kind of that dynamic. And it really gave a nice texture to my sketchbook. So this was something about my perception of time before our class, which was very linear and straight, and then my perception of time after, which was a cool thing to reflect on. Again, actually talking as a class about what we had just reflected on. This was one of the groups that had presented, and they had kind of talked about how smell and time are very like correlated, and I really related to that. Certain smells that I even like go into like someone's childhood home, and I'm like, oh, I remember this smell exactly, and there's no way to describe it as. Reflecting more on people's projects. Things would start to get stuck as I used different materials. And yeah, and then for my very last page, I wanted to make it as simple as possible, so all I said was that I did it with a period because I was really proud of myself. So thank you so much for joining me on the sketchbook tour, and yeah, thank you.